is Ariana Campbell, and I am in 6th grade. Shared my crystals and rocks collection because it's one of my bigger ones and my prettier ones, and I really like it. So. Maybe 4 years-ish. Mostly my dad, and some of them are from my mom, but definitely mostly my dad. My dad's in the military, and whenever he goes deployed, he usually brings us back something, like a crystal. A seashell collection, a whole jar, and then somewhere I have like a bag of it somewhere. This one's my amethyst, is probably one of my first ones I got. These ones, I'm pretty sure my mom got me from a crystal garden. A couple of these we didn't know the names to, but this is what we thought it was. I really like, where's it? These two, because if you reflect in the light, you could see little stars through them. This one is my birthstone. These are the diamonds. And my sister's birthstone.
I'm Ava Ranchini. I'm Chow Ranchini, and we're both in 7th grade. I shared with you my Marvel and football cards, and my Marvel cards, I have over 100 of them. I have NFL players and university players. I have Seattle Seahawks to Kansas City Chiefs. My favorite football team is the Kansas City Chiefs, and those are my favorite. I love collecting football cards. Okay, I have a Five Nights at Freddy's collection, and I love playing Five Nights at Freddy's. That's why I started collecting them, because I love the lore and all the characters in Five Nights at Freddy's. I've been collecting items from August of last year. I've been collecting football cards since 2019. My friend inspired me because she showed me Five Nights at Freddy's. She had all these posters and all this cool stuff. So I was like, and I started liking Five Nights at Freddy's. So I was like, I have to get this stuff. For me, my dad inspired me to start collecting football cards because my dad loves football so much. He'll watch a lot of the games, and I'd watch them with him, and I started to like it, and so I wanted to start collecting them because I knew he liked it a lot. Well, every time we go to Walmart, I make sure to look for it. I usually don't. And I usually go on Amazon, or because I have everything. And one time I went to the Funko store in Everett, Washington to get a set of French fries. For me, I found all my football cards in Amazon, so they just came to me. um, I haven't. Oh, I found some of my football cards at the dollar store. That's where I first started getting them at the. So we go to Oregon a couple times, and we have seashell collections, and that's pretty much it. I collect Funko Pops from Funko, and I collect quarters and put them in a book. And that's pretty much it. For me at first, I was really nervous to do it and I didn't want to do it, but I saw like how many people were doing it and I was like, I'll just do it. So I started doing it and I really liked participating in it and seeing people and seeing myself in the video every month. So I mean, I like how I like it all and I like how they started this in the situation we're in because of COVID-19. So my favorite one was building because I was super bored that month and I wanted to do something. I was like, what do I do for building? So I built the Finance Freddy Teds and it took a week, but it was like super fun because I was so bored and I had to do something. So I was like, let's just do the Famous Falcon. So doing Famous Falcon is fun because it's something to do when you're bored and it's like it's fun to see everybody see your talents.
My name is Keegan, and my grade level is the 8th grade. What I did was I sent in a bunch of pictures of my collector's trains from the 60s that I got a while ago. And basically, they're just really old collector trains that are worth a lot of money. And they work somehow. I don't know how, but they do work. And I have these train tracks. Some of them work. I got a whole box of them, like that big, like that tall, and 95% of them don't work. But I have barely a small track that works, and the transformers to make the trains move work somehow. It'd be 4 years now. I've had these trains. My grandpa used to be an environmental guy, and in his last few years, he worked in the office, and people would bring in these like old stuff that they didn't want that they could just take to the landfill. And pretty much my entire life, he's been like, I guess, taking me down to like Sumner where all the trains were go like sit on tractors in Sumner, and or we go to like his work and we watch the trains in Tacoma go by or something like that. So I just been liking trains pretty much my whole life. I've got some other old parts and stuff like that, but when he brought those home, it really kind of inspired me to start collecting more trains. And yeah, kind of. So the ones I showed, one of them, the kind of looks like, was it Pacific, the orange one? That one, the engine on the inside. So basically, like the transformer that's connected to the wall, and it brings energy into this certain track, and it puts electricity through the lines of the track which the train's sitting on. And I needed to put like a new motor in it, and the so like the energy is the electricity goes up the wheels, and it basically gets to like some generator wires essentially, and it goes to the motor, which makes the wheels spin. And I needed a new motor, so I had to put a new motor in. I basically just like collecting old stuff. I have some old German World War II coins. I have an old firefighter helmet from, I think, early 2000s, the 90s, from when Puyallup Fire Department was still a thing. What I think is cool about my collections is like, especially the trains, they're dated from like the 60s and 70s. It's like that the old stuff is kind of like stuff that your parents and your grandparents used to play with when they were kids. So I think that's probably the coolest thing about old stuff.
Hi, my name is Mr. Chow Miller. I teach STEM subjects to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders here at Frontier Middle School. This is all new Marvel Now .1 number 1, the first full appearance in story of Miss Marvel Kamala Khan. I have a collection of over 5,000 comic books. I collect runs, which means you start with issue 1, you go right to the end. I collect, I'm a completist with some things. So for example, one of my favorite comic books right now is called Die, and it is a D&D themed, that's where the word die comes from, like dice, D&D themed horror, fantasy, gothic book, and it's absolutely wonderful and amazing. And I not only have all the issues, but for most of the issues, they have what's called variant issues, which means they're different covers by different artists. They also have different printings. If a book became more popular than expected, they will go back and reprint it. Those are called second printings, and then obviously third and fourth, etc., etc. I have every single printing of every single issue of Die, and I have a few issues that are signed by both the author and artist. So yeah, I've been collecting a lot, and I keep them stored in boxes in a spare room in my house, which angers my wife a little bit. The first issue of a comic book that I ever collected with X-Men 149 came out in about 1980 or 81, I believe. I fell in love with Kitty Pryde, who is that character in the roller skates between Wolverine and Colossus, wearing the ridiculous costume, but she was the newest member of the X-Men, the youngest member of the X-Men at 13, and I was about 12 or 13 when I read the comic, and boom, I had a crush on her for many, many years. But all seriousness, this was the first issue that I read, and I fell in love with reading. I collected comics from about 80 to 89 when I went to college, and then I stopped, came back from college, sold all my comic books, regretted it, and then in 2012, I just happened to pick up a few new comics, Lock and Key, which you might have seen the show on Netflix, and fell in love with it again, and I've been collecting ever since. So for the last 9 or 10 years, just been back in the groove, collecting comics and loving it. This is a really freaky close-up. I wouldn't say there's anybody that's inspired me to collect comics. I get a lot of inspiration from the Instagram comic book community and the YouTube comic book community. I spend a great deal of time in both those communities, both sharing content and looking at other people's contents, and that's the way you learn about a lot of comics. That's where I buy a lot of comics. That's where I sell a lot of comics. One of the best places to find comics is at Half Price Bookstore. Half Price Bookstore in Tacoma, and there's a couple more around. You'll see all those 50-cent stickers on them. Not every comic has to be an expensive, beautiful comic in the best condition. This is Lumberjanes, one of my favorite comics, and these are beat-up copies I got for 50 cents each at a Half Price Book. Again, X-Men issues that I've gotten online or at back issue bins of comic book shops. These are all extras. Every comic that I'm showing you here, from the Lumberjanes to the X-Men to the next set, are comics that are actually in my classroom for students to read. You don't have to spend a lot of money to read great comic books. There are an immensely large amount of comics in the library that you can check out in the form of trade paperbacks. I would much rather you read comics and enjoy them than you collect them and buy them and put them in bags and boards and store them like I do. I was a comic book lover first for the stories and for the artwork. This is ElfQuest, one of the first independent comics out there, meaning it was not by Marvel or DC. The couple, Wendy and Richard Pini, published them on their own 40 years ago, and they're still going strong today. Again, read comics, enjoy comics, and then collect them if you want. There are some comics that I will never afford. Hulk 181, the first appearance of Wolverine in a comic book, is about a $3,000 comic book in bad condition right now. In perfect condition, it's about a $10,000 comic book. This will be one that we call a grail, meaning it's like the top book you want and you may never get. and that's okay. I can live with that. There's lots of places to find comic books. We are lucky there are 4 stores in this area: Comics The Gathering in Spanaway, Destiny City Comics, Atomic Comics, and Stargazer Comics in Tacoma. There's also Half Price Books, there's antique shops, there's lots of places to find comics. You can find them digitally, you can order them from Comixology, you can get them from the library, you can get them from your local library, you can borrow them from me. Right here we have Marvel's True Believers. These are $1 reprints of all their most famous stories. You've got the first appearance of Squirrel Girl, Spider-Man. You've got the first appearance of Ant-Man and Iron Man. You've got so many great books here that you can read for cheap. Read comics. Do not pay a lot of money for comics unless you want to seriously become a collector. But you can read them for cheap. You can borrow them. You can buy them. You can share them with your friends. That's the most important thing.